Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to revise the chapter Lines and Angles. This chapter will come in the Maths 2 assessment to be conducted soon, and this will consist of questions based on conceptual skills. So you have to revise the concepts of the chapter well. So go through the theory of the chapter, and today in the class we are going to revise the concepts of the chapter. So let us start with the revision of the chapter. Now, here are some angle facts related to lines and angles. The first type of related angles are adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are those angles which share a common arm and a common vertex. So, common arm and common vertex. Now, which is a common arm here in these two angles? BD is a common arm of these two angles represented by cross and dot, that is ABD and CBD. So BD is the common arm, and which is a common vertex? B is the common vertex. Therefore, angle ABD and angle CBD or DBC are adjacent angles. Now, what are complementary angles? Complementary angles are those which add to 90 degree or whose sum is 90 degree. So, two angles whose sum is 90 degree are called complementary angles. Now, in this figure here, these two angles, angle A and angle B, their sum is 90. But in this figure, they are shown adjacent angles also. But understand very well that complementary angles need not be adjacent angles. Complementary angles, the condition is that their sum should be 90 degree. That is the only condition. So, if I draw an angle like this and another angle here, now if their sum is 90, they will be called complementary angles. I hope you understand this. Suppose this angle is say 30 degree and this angle is 60 degree, right? So their sum will be 90, so they will be called vertically opposite angles. Then why this figure is shown here? This figure is shown here that this sum is 90. The figure shows here that this sum is 90, so that is why they are placed like adjacent angles, but they need not be adjacent angles. Same with supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are those angles which add up to 180 degree, are those angles whose sum is 180 degree. So here also they have shown like adjacent angles, but they are showing because they add up to 180 degree. But here also they can be two different angles. So suppose I draw one angle like this and another angle like this. Suppose the first angle marks up to say 70 degree, and the second angle measures 110 degree. So their sum is 180. So in that case, they will be supplementary angles. So again, they need not be supplementary angles. The figure shows here that the sum is 180 degree. So when placed together, they form a straight line. The outer arms will form a straight line. And do you know what are these angles called when they are supplementary as well as adjacent? We'll come to it later in detail, but actually they are called linear pair. So once supplementary angles are adjacent also, they are called linear pair. So which will come in detail later. Now in the next type, we have vertically opposite angles. So it's simple. When two lines are intersecting each other, so at intersection point, we have opposite angles. So one pair is opposite angles, one pair of opposite angles. We have angle A and angle C. They are vertically opposite because they are forming a cross here. So they are vertically opposite angles. And another pair, you can look at this. Another pair is angle B and angle D. So once the angles which are shown by yellow are a pair of vertically opposite angles, and another pair of B and D are shown by green color here. Now the next type is angles at a point. So when a few lines are meeting at a point, now what is that point here? So look at this point. This is the intersection point of all the lines. So when few lines meet at a point or intersect at a point, now there need not be straight lines produced after the intersection point. They are just meeting at an intersection point. So the angles formed at intersection point, that is here they are shown by angle A, angle B and angle C. So actually they form a complete circle. They form a complete circle, and hence they are called angles at a point. And since they are forming a circle, so their sum will be 360 degree. So A plus B plus C is 360. Now here as many angles are formed, their sum will be 360. Suppose another line is this, one more line is like this. So we have one angle formed here. One is this, second is this, third is this, fourth is this, and fifth is this. All angles meeting at a point. So sum of all these angles will be 360 degree. So these are a few pairs of angles made up with lines, and when lines meet somewhere, angles are formed. Now let us recapitulate linear pairs. Now linear pairs, as I told you earlier, are adjacent angles which are formed on a straight line, and their sum since they are formed on a straight line, so this sum will be 180 degree. So there are two conditions, that they should be adjacent angles, and the other condition is that they should be supplementary angles, that is their sum should be 180 degree. So here you can see some angles. For example, angle 1 and angle 4, they are formed on the same straight line. This is a straight line on which they are formed. So this is the common arm. This is the common arm. So here two angles which are formed are angle 1 and angle 4. So the sum is 180 because their outer arms, which one are outer arms? Let me tell you. This is the common vertex of the two angles. So this is the outer arm of this angle 1, and this is the outer arm of other angle 4. So the outer arms lie in a straight line, that is why they are called linear, because linear is made up of line. So since it is forming a line, hence they are called forming a linear pair. Same way, there are more linear pairs. Can you identify them? Try to identify. I give you few seconds to identify, and then I tell you which one are the pairs of linear pairs. So let us see whether you identified them well. You can check your solution from here. Linear pairs. Let us see which one are forming linear pairs here. So here linear pairs in the given figure are, in bracket it is written as a pair. So 1, 4 means 1 and 4 are forming linear pair. Then 1 and 3, 4 and 2, 3 and 2, and another point, that means at now this point of intersection we have 5 and 8 forming a linear pair. Same way 5. Now if I change the pair, so 5 and 7 also forming linear pair. Same way 7 and 6 forming a linear pair. So this way we can write pairs of linear angles, linear pair angles. Because in maths 1 paper you now let us look at parallel lines. And when parallel lines are cut by a transversal, we have several pair of angles formed. So let us study them in detail. So understanding properties of angles made by a transversal with two parallel lines. So here I am showing you a video which will explain you by 3D how these angles are formed and how to identify them by some memorable concepts. So let us watch the video.
Good morning, Green Lines. Our topic today is angles and parallel lines. And our goal, I can spot equal angles when parallel lines are involved. And I can figure out other angles. So we're going to talk about parallel lines to start with. And I've drawn a couple of parallel lines here. And I've marked some with stars. Now it's pretty obvious that these two angles here are not the same angle. They're not equal if you take a look at them. This one here with the yellow star is obtuse. It bends kind of backwards. This one here is acute because it bends in. It's less than 90 degrees. So a couple of things over here. Parallel lines are lines that will never cross. That's what you've been told before. A transversal is this blue line. It's a line that cuts across a pair of parallel lines. So if these are parallel, remember we mark things parallel with two little tick marks like that. So if those two lines are parallel, this is a transversal because it cuts across it. So getting that out of the way, I'm just going to do a quick little demonstration here with these two parallel lines on what angles are the same. So it's very obvious that the yellow and the blue angle are not the same. But if I clone this and I pull it down like that, it's also kind of plain to see that there's lots of angles that are equal. So if I pull that right away, this star lines up with that angle down there, and this star will line up with that angle down there, and those two angles are equal. I can also flip this thing around like that, and I've got other angles that are equal down in here. And remember that yellow star was the same over here, and then this is equal over here. So there's lots of equal lines all over the place when you have a transversal cutting a parallel line. So I'm just going to tell you the different types of lines, and you may have heard this before in elementary school. So these diagrams show the special angle pairs. So here, these two angles are equal, and they're called alternate angles. You may have also heard them called the Z pattern, and the reason they're called the Z pattern is if I'm going to take a highlighter, I can draw a Z around those two things, and they sort of form a Z, so we call that the Z pattern. The next one are called corresponding angles, and corresponding angles also form a pattern. They're known as the F pattern. Now that F is kind of upside down, but it's still, you can see that those two little dots in there form the F pattern. And lastly, interior angles. Interior angles form a C pattern. And notice I didn't mark them with the same symbol. That's because interior angles aren't equal. Here's what we know about these angles in here. Alternate angles make a Z pattern. Alternate angles are equal. Corresponding angles make what we call an F pattern. Corresponding angles are equal. And interior angles make what we call a C pattern. Interior angles add to 180 degrees. So they're not equal, and again, you can sort of see that. One is obtuse and the other is acute, so they can't be equal. So now, how do we use these? We've got actually one more to talk about. This doesn't have to happen with parallel lines. It can happen when any two lines intersect. We have, some people might call this the X pattern. Those are what we call opposite angles. And when two lines cross, opposite angles are equal. Opposite angles appear directly across from each other. Opposite angles are equal. Okay.
Now let us quickly recapitulate the properties of angles made by a transversal with two parallel lines, as you already have watched in the video. So here we have drawn two parallel lines M and N, which are cut by a transversal. So here I have named the angles as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now let us see how much you understood. Now if I ask you to name all possible corresponding angles, now start naming. Before I show you the solution, start naming the pair of all possible corresponding angles. Now let's see. whether your answer matches correctly or not. Pair of corresponding angles here are 1 and 5, 3 and 7, 2 and 6, 4 and 8. So the angles which lie in the same position. Now why 3 and 8? Because 1 and 5 you easily understand. Why 3 and 7 are corresponding? Because they lie in the same position. 3 is lying below this line and 7 is lying the below another parallel line. So since both are lying on the same side of transversal and both below the parallel lines, so they lie in the same position. That is why angle 3 and angle 7 are corresponding angles. Same way angle 4, here you can see angle 4 and angle 8, they also lie in the same position on the same side of the transversal and below the parallel lines. And then 2 and 6, they are above the parallel line and on the same side, so they are corresponding angles, pair of corresponding angles. Now let's see quickly the next type. Now quickly try to name the pair of alternate angles, alternate interior angles in fact. Now let's see whether you understood the Z pattern. Remember the Z pattern which is explained to you, and here it is also shown by a red color. I'll show you once again. Now you can see the Z pattern shown by a red color, and you can identify the alternate angles. So let's see whether your solution is correct. So pair of alternate angles here are 3 and 6 and 4 and 5. The third type is vertically opposite angles. Vertically opposite angles, wherever two lines intersect each other, vertically opposite angles are formed. So here this is the point of intersection. So angle A and angle 4 are vertically opposite, and then another pair is angle 2 and angle 3. They are vertically opposite angles. So here I have written all possible vertically opposite angles. You can first name and then match your answer from here. 1, 4, 2, 3. Then another point of intersection is this. So 5, 8 and 6, 7 are vertically opposite angles. Now these angles which are written till now, all these three pair of angles are equal. They are equal angles. So remember, that is why I have written them separately. They are equal angles. So remember, we are talking about equal angles. So these pair of angles are equal to each other. So corresponding angles are equal to each other. Then we have alternate interior angles equal to each other. So same way we have these angles equal to each other. Vertically opposite angles also equal to each other. So now let's see some more pairs of angles. So can you identify now co-interior angles? Co-interior which lie inside the two parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. Like a sandwich, they are sandwiched between the parallel lines. So try to identify the co-interior angles. So let's see whether your answer is correct. So pairs of co-interior angles are 3 and 5 and 4 and 6. Then another pair of angles are linear pair angles, which we have already discussed in detail earlier. So here at this intersection point, the first intersection point which we discussed was this. So we have angle 1 and angle 2, they are forming linear pair. Then angle 1 and angle 3 forming linear pair. Same with 3 and 4. So there are many pair of angles which are forming linear pair. So just see whether you can name all the pair of angles or not. And once you have named, you can match it from here. So revise all the concepts of the chapter. Once again, I tell you, this chapter is going to come in Maths 2 paper, and which will be conducted in Google form, and which will test your conceptual skill. So your conceptual skills should be well clear, and if there's any doubt, you can ask your teachers, and clear your concepts by reading the theory, by reading the summary of the chapter, doing the exercise given at the back, some exercises which are objective type, mental type, fill in the blanks, etc. And today you are given a worksheet. Solve it and submit in the due time to your respective teacher's mail ID. Thank you.